This is video 28, module 7 of our beginner Python tutorial. We're going to cover in this module Flet plus FastAPI integration. And this is closer to a traditional full stack Python architecture than the previous full stack module that we did. In this video, we'll give you a preview of what we are going to build and why we are building it. Just to recap, Flet is a framework in Python to build interactive applications. It's not a common framework, meaning that if you put it on your resume, it may not trigger the AI search engine for that job. However, we're using it so that you can learn the concepts of Python and to some degree the full stack integration. You can use it to build web, desktop, and mobile apps and include the screenshots or the URL in your portfolio or resume. Most importantly, you can write everything in Python to get beautiful UIs, and you could use the additional components to build more beautiful UIs. We're covering some pretty simple UIs in this tutorial series. You don't need HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So assuming that you just want to focus on Python and build some skills that might be usable in the workforce, this is a good course, although it does not cover things like React right now. FastAPI is a modern Python framework for building APIs. And unfortunately for modern, it means it's not going to be as popular as Flask or Django right now, although I think it's pretty close for the new applications. It may have even surpassed it in use for new applications. So FastAPI, it might be reasonable to put on your resume, a Python backend framework. The APIs, as you probably know, is application programming interface. So we use FastAPI to expose the logic to the front end. It's like a waiter. The waiter takes your order with a request. In our case, it's like a HTTP request, but there's a person that takes your order and then brings the food over to you. So it's request and response. And in this case, we're using data with FastAPI. It creates endpoints your app can call. So you expose the logic through a URL or a route, and we'll cover it. And then your other application can call it up. It's more complex. It's easier if you just use Flet. If you have a front end and separate out the back end, it is useful. You can use Flet to create the UIs. You can store the complex logic in FastAPI. It does create more organized and maintainable code if your application is more complex, which applications in this course are not complex, but we're showing you the basic architecture of how to separate out the backend and the front end so that you're more used to normal full stack Python application. The application that we are going to build is extremely simple. It's just a calculator that adds two numbers, so you'll practice input fields. There's a calculate button, and it'll send the contents of the fields to FastAPI. FastAPI will then add them and display the results on a UI. It demonstrates front-end, back-end communication, and we're using a very simple app so that you can understand the architecture more easily. The interface is a simple web interface. You input two numbers here. These are input fields. You press calculate, you'll get the number that you would expect. So it demonstrates front end, back end in a simple application. The architecture is that there is a folder called app, and in the folder called app, we have a file called api.py. This will be the FastAPI routes. There's another file called ui.py, which will be the Flet UI. It's tied together by main.py. And there's another file, which uv, which we use for the course, creates automatically when you init the new Python project, and this has the dependencies. The purpose of this tutorial series is to understand the separation of the UI here from the business logic. The key concepts you will learn are separation of concerns, where the UI and the business logic, they're not all mashed together in the same file. Potentially they could also be on different servers, but that's only if you have a pretty complex application. There's something called API endpoints and request handlers. So you put the API out there for something to grab. So it's like, it's like the waiter. You give it a request to the endpoint and you get something back in return. The front end, which is going to be the Flet UI, will make the HTTP request, and we will cover integration of how to combine the front end and the back end together.